Welcome back, everyone. Dan Vega here, and today we're talking about taking our JTE apps to production. Now, what is JTE? It stands for Java Template Engine, and it's another template engine that is now available in Spring Boot. It was always available. It was never on the Spring Initializer. Now it is. So I've been exploring it a lot lately, and I really like it. So it's an alternative to something like Timeleaf or Mustache or Groovy Template, and it just allows us to build some full stack applications in Spring. It has some pros over some of the other template engines, at least for me. We get these nice precompiled templates. They're very fast. We also have the ability to use Java objects in these templates. So when I ask for a user object and I say user dot, I get insights, I get IntelliSense into the different fields, the different methods within that particular user object. So I find that when I jump into an existing project that uses JTE, I'm not kind of guessing what's around or what's available in a template. It makes it a lot easier for me. So I've been having fun with this. Now I've been doing a lot of just demos. I haven't taken a lot of stuff to production. And I went to try and take something into production-ish, and I ran into a couple of issues. One, on the side of just creating a jar file. If you need to create a jar file, there's something you'll run into that we'll take a look at today. And then two, on the side of creating a native image in Spring Boot. And I found an issue there that I couldn't actually run this in production using a native image. And that's kind of where it was. I was trying to run build a native image that I could just run locally on my computer, because this isn't something that I needed to push out into the wild. But nonetheless, building an artifact for production with JTE, I ran into two small issues, and I wanted to share the solutions with you. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over here. I have a GitHub repo here, github.com/danvega/JTE production. And this has the sample code that we're going to go through today. So I'll leave a link in the description below. And this has a quick README that kind of talks through the project. Again, the project itself isn't that interesting. We're just going to build like a simple to-dos app that displays a bunch of to-dos, but it will have a JTE template in. And then what we'll try to do is take this to production. So we're going to build two artifacts. One, we're going to build a jar file. So we'll see how to build that and what issues we run into when we do that. And then two, we're going to build a native image. And when we do that, there's some gotcha here that we need to be aware of. And you can kind of see that here in the resource runtime hints. So this is available, this README, all the source code that we're going through today, you can find it here. But we're going to build this out together. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to head over to start.spring.io. I'm going to choose Java. The latest version of Spring Boot, which at the time of this recording is 3.4.0. We'll fill in some metadata about this. I'll say dev.danvega, JTE production. I'm going to leave this off. That's fine. I'm going to use JDK 23. And all we'll really need for this is web. We're going to use JTE, so I'll bring in Java Template Engine. We are, at the end of the day, going to build a native image, so we'll get the GraalVM native image support. We'll do a quick check, but if you're going to build the native image, you will need the Graal JDK. There's a couple different versions of that, but there's a community version that you can get for free, and that will suffice for this particular example. So I think that's all we need. We can go ahead and click generate. This will download a zip file. You can open it up in whatever text editor or IDE you're most productive in. For me, that's going to be IntelliJ Ultimate Edition. And with that, I think we have everything we need to get going. So what are we waiting for? Let's write some code. All right, so here in our app, I'm going to create a new package. As I said, we're going to create a simple to-do app today. And inside of here, we are going to create a new record to kind of model the different to-dos in our application. And I think we'll keep this pretty simple here. We'll need a long ID, a string title, description, and Boolean completed. That looks good. So there is our to-do record. The next thing we'll need is a controller. I'm going to go ahead and create a Java class. We'll call this to-do controller. And this is going to be this is not going to be a REST controller. This is going to be a controller. And inside of there, we'll create a simple Git mapping, and this is going to be for the root. And at the end of the day, we're going to just return a string, list of to-dos. because this is going to return the JTE template. So at the end of the day, we're going to create a template called index, and that will return that index. Now, what we're going to do is add a few to-dos. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these in just so we don't have to watch me type them out. So here are some to-dos. I have learn Spring Boot, create a YouTube video, write documentation. So I have my to-dos, and what I want to do now is add those to the model. So I'll come in here and say model. That is Spring Framework. We'll call this model. And now what I can do is go ahead and add these to the model. So I'll say model.add attribute. And the first attribute will be the to-dos. And so that will be our list of to-dos. And then I'll add another one for page title, and we'll call this my to-do list. So from the Java side of things, I think that's all we need for now. Next, what we need is we need an actual template. So I'm going to go into JTE folder. I like dropping this .jte root in here because IntelliJ just kind of tells me, gives me some hints that I should do that. So I will do that. Now remember, we are returning the index template here. So what I want to do is come in here and say, I want to create a new file in here, and this is going to be called index.jte. And we'll paste, let's grab some code here for this, and we'll just kind of walk through this real quick. But what we are doing is we are declaring a parameter called string of type string called page title, and then a list of to-dos called to-dos. So we're going to display the page title here. We are bringing in Tailwind just to kind of add some styling. So you can see I have some Tailwind styles in here. We display a page title in a h1 tag. We have this div, we have this table, we have these headers, so ID, title, description, and status. And then in the body, we are going to iterate over those to-dos. So we're saying for var to-do in to-dos, for each one of those to-dos, I want to display the ID, title, description, and then if it's completed, I want to display completed or pending, and we're just adding some different background color to it. Nothing crazy, pretty simple. Again, if you want to follow along, you can just grab this from the repo and follow along. So I think that's all we need. We'll go ahead and make note of our application.properties. This kind of says this in here already. This is the name, and we're setting the JTE development mode equal to true by default. That means we can go in and change some things if we need to and not have to rerun the application. We kind of get that hot reload, if you will. So that looks like we have everything. Let's go ahead and see if we can run our application. And I'll go to localhost 8080, and there's our page title and then our 3 to-dos that are in there. And we just got this little pill saying whether it's pending or completed. Okay, so this is pretty basic stuff. This is what we've done in some previous videos. But now what I want to do is go ahead and take this to production. I want to build a production artifact. And we're going to run into a couple of issues with this. So the first one I want to build is just a jar file. And we can do this by running package. We can run Maven clean package because we're using Maven. And that at the end of the day, we'll create a jar file. So I'm going to open up a terminal. And again, we don't have, you could have Maven installed, but I have the Maven wrapper here. So I'm going to just say Maven wrapper clean, and we're just going to run package, and that should create a jar file for us. If everything goes okay, if we go into the target file directory, now we have this JTE production, and we should be able to run that. So if we say java-jar, and we want to run target JTE production, there we go. Everything starts up okay. Now we can head back to the browser and try and run this again on localhost 8080, and you'll see we get an error. This is a 500 error. What is going on? This was just working perfectly, works on my machine, right? But if we come in here and we see this, we see that, hey, for self-contained applications, JT templates must be pre-compiled. It even sends us to some documentation over on the JTE website. So we know that these must be pre-compiled, but our application.properties says development mode, and by default, pre-compiled is not going to happen when we're in development mode. So what I want to do is create a new set of properties for when we are going to run in production. Because this works fine for development, I want to keep this for development. So what I'm going to say is application.prod, dot properties. And again, everything in properties is going to stay there. All we want to do is override what we want in production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set JTE development mode equal to false. And then I'm also going to say the use pre-compiled templates. You'll see the default is false. I want to say true because I want those to be true in production. So now what I can do is I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. So let's stop this. And I'm going to run Maven clean package. We're going to create a new jar file. The only difference here is that when I run this jar, I want to say that you're using a specific profile. So I can do that by saying -d spring.profiles.active equals prod. So now if we go ahead and run this, you'll see that we are using the prod profile. So now if we go back over to the browser and we run it, everything works fine. So again, this is because when we are running in production with JTE, we want to make sure we are using pre-compiled templates. So these two properties in our production profile will work. Now I just passed this in on a command line argument for my local machine. But usually when you run this in a production environment, you'll have ways to set an environment variable for that. So you can just say spring profiles active equals prod. And now that will use that prod profile and it will just override these two. So if you had a whole bunch of information in here, the only new ones you need are these to override those that are in application.properties. All right, so the next thing we want to do is build a native image. Let me go ahead and close these up. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we're just going to try and build a native image, knowing that this is going to fail, but I want to walk through this process so that we can see what is going on. I'm actually going to add a couple of logging statements. Let's go ahead and add this to prod for now. And what I want to do is just build the native image. So what we want to do is we want to come in here, even if we want to use the production profile, right? Let's look at our pom.xml. So we're using the GraalVM native build tools. So if we go down here, we see a native Maven plugin here, and that allows us to build a native image. If I check my version of Java, I'm using the GraalVM Community Edition, JDK 23. So that is what we are using. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can use Maven wrapper, and we could switch over to the native profile and we could say native compile. So we're going to natively compile an application here. I think I don't have any extra tests in here right now, so this should go through. If you have some tests, you can go ahead and skip tests if you need to. But this should go ahead and compile just fine, or natively compile just fine. Now this is going to take a second. Even on my new MacBook Pro 4, this runs really fast, but it still takes quite, probably about a minute. So we'll just wait for this to finish. And what we'll try and do is we'll try and run the native image and see if we can get it to work. Spoiler alert, we're not going to be able to get it to work, but that's okay. I want to take a look at this. And then I added these in here so that we can take a look at this. Now, when I run a native image, this is in the target folder. So if we look in here now, there is this JTE production. That is our native image. So if I go into target, JTE production, I want to run with that active profile to prod. So if we go ahead and run that, everything looks okay. We have our logging levels on debug. So if we hit something, we'll get a little bit more information. So I'm going to go over here and run this, and we indeed get an error. And if we go in here and start to, now if you didn't have this debug on, you might not find out what's going on, and that's why I put that in there for us. But if we go in there, we see we have this get mapping. So we have a get mapping to the root, no parameters. This is mapped to the to-do controller, that list to-dos method. So we know that. We are selecting text/HTML, so we want to display that template text, right? We have a view name of index. We have a model of this. So we have all this information being passed in the model. And then we are forwarding on to index. So we forward to index. And then it says mapped to resource HTTP request handler, resource not found. So this is telling me that, hey, even though we're asking for that index template, it is not finding it. And if you've done any work in GraalVM, building native images in Spring Boot, you know that this is one of the things that you need to look out for. Like when we are using anything dynamic that's going on in our application, Spring provides a lot of the resource hints for things that are going dynamic in Spring. But if we were to like create our own proxy or create, maybe we had a resource that we wanted to pull in, like a PDF or an image, we need to make sure that we provide those hints to the compiler so that when we natively compile it at runtime, like it's available. And in fact, because this is a JTE, this is a class. So if we go in here and we look at JTE under generated, the precompiled class, this is a Java class, right? So this is Java source code. It knows about this. But what it doesn't know about is this JTE index generated.bin, and this is where our template code is. So this is what it's actually missing, and we need to provide a hint so that it knows about those bin files. And the way that we do this, there are a couple different ways you can generate some JSON data and put it in metainf into a particular path. You can even ask the GraalVM tools to kind of generate some of this for you. But the folks on the Spring team gave us a really easy way to do this by creating a class that implements something like the runtime hints registrar. So I'm going to say this is my resource runtime hints, and this is a class that is going to implement the runtime hints registrar, right? And so we're going to implement a method. One of those methods, that only method there, is called runtime register hints. So we do want to mark this as an add component. And inside of here, I can use this hints. So I'm going to say hints dot, and this is a resource that we want to register. So I'm going to say dot resources, and I'm going to register a pattern. And that pattern is going to simply be anything star dot bin. Okay. So once that's in place, I have one more thing here to say reflection. And I want to point out that we are registering a type, so register type, and that type is going to be the JTE index. Oops, is that not it? JTE index generated. No, let's see. Okay, and once that is in place, we want to come back over. This is the one step I always forget about is importing the runtime hints, and this is going to be the resource runtime hints.class, and now this should work. Now I think I might need a reflection for that particular JTE index generated class. So let's go in here and say hints.reflection, and what we want to do is register a type. And that type is the JTE index, which it's not finding. Let me do this. Reload. There it is. So there's what we were looking for. And what we just want to do is use member category.invoke declared constructors. And member category dot invoke declared methods. And so that should give us everything we need. Let's go ahead and try this one more time. So we're going to natively compile again. All right, let's go. Third time's a charm. Let's see if we can go ahead and run this. So we're running with the prod profile, and we refresh this, and we see that this now works. So again, that's the natively compiled one. You can see that starts up extremely quickly here. Uses less memory, and then yeah, I can do some cool things with that locally, being able to run this as a native image on my machine. So thanks to the great Dr. Dave Sire for this little bit. I was really stuck on this. I couldn't figure out why that was happening. And then he pointed out, like, hey, yes, we have this Java class here, but we also have the bin, which is the actual template code that we need to use. So we need to include that as a resource, and then everything will work okay. So there you have it. If you are running a Spring Boot application that uses Java Template Engine and you're trying to take it to production, whether it's using a jar file or a native image, these are a couple issues you might run into, and it's just good to know how to solve for them. So I learned a lot making this video. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, do me a big favor. Give me a thumbs up. I'm looking for those subscribers. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, friends, happy coding.